there. We let our welcome slide. Just click right there.
Right here?
No, right here. Yes. It's okay. There we go. So it'll just cycle through here until 10:30.
10:30, and there's now 10, 15, 16,
About 10:18 maybe.
Don't go away too far.
I'm not going anywhere.
It's right here. It's hard to see.
It's hidden. There we go. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. I'm Helen Foss, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to our service this morning as this morning's worship associate. I am not giving the sermon, as you may have read in the e-news. Reverend Larry is here. I'm sure you'll be very happy to hear him today. So, welcome to all of you who are here in person in our sanctuary this morning, and welcome to each and every one of you at home who are joining us online. Welcome no matter the hue of your skin or the origin of your ethnicity. Welcome no matter whom you love or where you are on your spiritual journey, whether you're doubting, believing, or searching. Welcome if you have a disability, visible or invisible. Welcome whether you want for nothing or whether you struggle each day to make it through. Welcome whatever your political bent, or whether you are young of age or young at heart. You are welcome here. If you're new to our church, we invite you to check us out on http://firstuuwilm.org and sign up for our e-newsletter that will arrive every Friday in your inbox, just like clockwork. Or if you're attending online today, you'll find a link to our visitor card in the chat. Reverend Larry's sermon description for today's service prompted me to do some thinking. I was unfamiliar with Julia Hotz and her book, The Connection Cure, The Prescriptive Power of Movement, Nature, Art, Service, and Belonging. Prescription power. But reflecting on her title, I realized that over my years here at First Unitarian, I've become very familiar with the idea of the power of connections. I have talked before about my experience with the Green Circle program and all the ways we help children develop a sense of empathy, a way to understand how they felt when they were included and how they felt when they were left out, encouraging them to put themselves in others' shoes, to look at the importance of the idea of belonging, as in the title of Holtz's book. I think back on the connection with nature and spirituality I experienced in my early teenage self with nature, standing alone at the rim of the Grand Canyon, listening to the wind and realizing the notion of infinity. Years later, finding ways to share that and many other encounters with nature that were mystical and quite powerful. Has that happened to you? Perhaps you've had similar experiences. One more connection cure demands my attention in this reflection: the power of service. Whether it's the ahas from the children's new insights with our Green Circle work, or their teachers' appreciation for the impact we could have on their classroom climate, or the years of being a part of the First Unitarian Choir and making music for you like you're going to do today, or offering our travelogues that we give now at Cokesbury to share our travels for others' enjoyment, connecting. There's little more rewarding than the power of service for the benefit of others. So Reverend Larry, I'm ready to hear more of your take on Julia Hotz and her work. Now, I'm feeling her thinking could enrich my life. And then to all of you here this morning, let's pause a moment, turn and greet and connect with your neighbors, especially any newcomers you might see. Now let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship with Kathy Harris playing our prelude.
So good morning. Is this on? I'm the Reverend Larry Piers, minister here at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, and I have the joy of being in your presence today. I want to start with some appreciations. The choir did such a marvelous job last Sunday learning all these new pieces, and I never really had a chance to, and maybe you didn't either, to thank them. And we clapped this way here as a way to show our appreciation. So just amplify this sound within your heart and know how deeply we appreciate what you add to our services each Sunday. I also have some appreciation for our board, not only because they have brought the snacks today, but also because of the service that they give to this congregation in leadership. We had a retreat, when was that, a few weeks ago, and so they're poised and ready to take on their leadership in this congregation. And I wonder if we could have the board members just stand for a moment so that those of you who might not know them can begin to connect them with, and we'll show our appreciation to you as well. And just in case you didn't know it, you didn't get the newsletter or the broadcast, all week, including today, is considered Hans's birthday week. So please connect with him during the fellowship time and wish him a happy, happy birthday. Okay, I could go on. I'll stop there. So our words for our call to worship are from Wendell Berry. We clasp the hands of those that go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers, whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance to a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it except in fragments. Let's join together now in worship.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it now as Reverend Larry lights our chalice with these words by a good friend of ours, UU Reverend Greg Pelley, who just recently retired from our Mill Creek Church. He says, "And so we gather from the ebb and flow of our lives, thirsty for connection to ourselves, thirsty for connection to others, thirsty for connection to the larger life. As we light this chalice, may all who gather here be filled with joy and hope, filled with compassion and love. And may we be filled so that we may pour ourselves out into the world." Please rise now as you're willing and able and join in singing hymn 1008, "When Our Heart is in a Holy Place." An affirmation.
Trust
Please join me now in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
To invite you into a time of meditation this morning, I want to start with a story that comes from the book by Helen Keller, The Story of My Life. Heller explains that her deaf blindness was a kind of captivity that made her a prisoner of her own mind. It was her connection with a 20-year-old woman, Anne Sullivan, that provided the liberation that Keller didn't even know was available to her. Heller learned to communicate through the skin. What opened up for her was an incredible release from her solitary confinement. Heller writes, "Love came and set my soul free. Once I fretted and beat myself against the wall that shut me in, but a little word from the fingers of another fell into my hand that clutched at emptiness, and my heart leapt to the rapture of living." What opened up for her in this capacity for language was that she could finally share her thoughts and feelings with others. When she discovered the word love, she felt herself opening to a beautiful truth. She expressed it this way: "I felt there were invisible lines stretched between my spirit and the spirit of others." I felt there were invisible lines stretched between my spirit and the spirit of others. So friends, I'd like us to pause with that image during this time of meditation. Can we take this time and imagine, if just for a minute or so, that there are indeed invisible lines stretched between our spirit and the spirit of others? Can we imagine all the ways that can be true for any one of us? Sense those invisible lines stretched between your spirit and others. Feel the potential healing of these connections. Discover what ways you can actually make those invisible lines more visible. Let's stay with this image as we now move into a time of shared silence. May we continue to give a blessing and receive a blessing through these lines, these invisible lines that connect us with others. So may it be. Amen. So each week we do take a moment to listen to whatever it is that we're holding in our own hearts, whatever concerns that might feel as burdens that we need not carry alone. And also we take time to articulate those joys that are emerging perhaps at the edges of our own life. So let's take a moment first and share, if you want, in the chat or in this room aloud, whatever concern you are carrying today. What might those include?
Our teenagers' mental health. All lifelines.
Do you feel the burden, as I do today, of those who would choose to lie about certain things happening in Ohio with immigrants as a way to divide and distract us? Do you feel the concern of the implications of that for the lives of those people? The bomb threats, the schools being closed, and the kind of atmosphere of fear that that creates? I don't care what political party someone belongs to, I think that needs to be called out. Do you agree with me? Yes. Any other concerns? That's a big one. All right, so let's go to that territory of joy, those places in our heart that are beginning to want to sing out a joy that we need not hold just to ourselves, but that we can share with one another. What's a joy that you might have today? It's a beautiful day.
Helena Miller is waiting for her first grandchild.
Yes. Helena Miller's waiting for her first grandchild. Goodness. Someone will translate that for me later. I think I understood it. Okay, what else? What's a joy that you have? Attending weddings, yeah. Promise of rain.
My grandson hit his first home run yesterday.
Wow. Great. So for the concerns or the joys that we hold, let's hold them alongside of one another. Let's hold them in the presence of love that can call us to reach higher and wider, to embrace the world with compassion and with care. So before Helen shares the reading this morning, I have a question I want to ask you. Ready? Yes? No? Ready? Okay. What makes you feel healthy? Now, don't overthink it. Just notice the first thing that comes to mind. Let's pause for a bit and form our own response. What makes you feel healthy? So I'm curious, is there a short way that you could express what came to you when I asked you that question? What makes you feel healthy? Can you? Singing. I love it when you all try to speak at once. Let's go to this area of the room. What makes you feel healthy? Sleep. Eating right. Time with family. Okay, so we've moved now to the center here. What other things make you feel healthy? Let's focus those on walking in the woods. Say it again, Ruth. The love around you. Okay. And then we'll go to this part of the room. Yes. Healthy food. Swimming. A great cup of coffee. Pursuing art. So today our focus is on healing and the connection cure, and you already have some wisdom and some insight about that we have just gathered. So let's continue our reflection with the reading.
A middle-aged man with mysterious pains walks into a doctor's office where 3 helpers greet him. "When your pain began, what else was happening in your life?" asks the first helper, a teacher from Nepal. The patient, we'll call him John, thinks for a minute. He realizes his pain began right after his wife died. With no reason to leave the house, John didn't. And now he spends most of his days in bed, achy and alone. The second helper, a chemist from Iran, chimes in. "Do you have food, cash, a reason to get up in the morning?" John thinks some more. He says he has his basic needs covered, but his will to wake up died when his wife died. Then the third helper, a physician from Greece, asked John about his pain from the other end. "When your wife was alive, what made you healthy?" This time when John answers, his whole face lights up as he describes a dreamy scene. Each morning, he and his wife would walk in the park, greeting songbirds, the oak trees, the neighbors. After work, he'd sit in his backyard and strum his guitar while his wife would sing along. Night after night, they'd cruise through songbook after songbook, playing new melodies and harmonies and guitar riffs. And then John would go to sleep. He couldn't wait to wake up until he woke up the next morning and do it all again. Now with a sense of what used to make John feel healthy, the doctor offers some medicine. a spot in their community orchestra, and taking a prescription pad, he writes precise instructions to walk to the local symphony hall for orchestra practice 3 times a week. He offered John a social prescription.
Thank you, Helen. So notice that in this reading there are 3 helpers that John initially consulted with as he seeks healing. The first is a teacher from Nepal, the other is a chemist from Iran, the third is a physician from Greece. These 3 people are actually based on real people. The teacher from Nepal, who asked, "When did your pain begin? What was happening in your life?" is based on the Buddha, who taught that in order to alleviate suffering, a person should try to understand or be mindful of its cause. The second teacher, the chemist from Iran, was a teacher, R. al-Razi, who, rather than blaming illness on supernatural causes, as his contemporaries did, looked at how sickness could be the result of unmet social needs. So he was the one who asked, "Do you have food, cash, a reason to get up in the morning?" The third person from Greece is based on Hippocrates. We all know Hippocrates, right? So recall that he was the one who asked, when your wife was alive, what made you feel healthy? He aimed to use warmth, sympathy, and understanding as much as medical procedures or medicines. He and his contemporaries would often prescribe exercise or music, theater, to treat various conditions. We might say that each were offering what today is called social prescribing. The central focus of social prescribing is our environments make a difference. I think even more than that is how we utilize and access the healing potential of our environment makes a real difference in our capacity to heal, to be made whole. This view of healing is prevalent in many indigenous traditions who understood people's health was related to the health of their interconnected relationships, both with their neighbors and the natural world. African communities as well used communal rituals. Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine have long emphasized the relationship between a person's body and their surrounding environment. Julia Hotz's recent book, The Connection Cure, The Prescriptive Power of Movement, Nature, Art, Service, and Belonging, outlines her discoveries in more than 30 countries around the world that use some form of social prescription in the healthcare process. She documents how more and more the perspective on what makes you feel healthy, there's that question again, has been informed by experiences and research on the curative aspects of what our ancestors often practiced already. Hotz states it this way, and I'll quote her: "Movement, nature, art, service, and belonging were once staples of our daily life." You remember way back in the prehistoric times, right? But since our survival no longer requires these 5 ingredients, we no longer structure our lives around them. Instead of moving our bodies, observing nature, creating art, serving our neighbors, and seeking belonging among fellow human beings, most of us spend most of our time sitting, observing screens, consuming content, obsessing over our stuff, and seeking belonging among superficial sources. Instead of connections in our environments, we fill our waking hours with their substitutes. Intuitively, I believe that many of us know and have experienced the healing and the medicinal qualities of movement and nature and art, service and belonging. We know it. We've experienced it. We seek some of these experiences out because we know that they somehow complete us. They open us up. They renew us. Yet, as Hotz points out, particularly in our culture, there are competing practices and habits that have us, that absorb our attention and seem to predetermine our way of moving and being in the world day to day. Yet, don't we often hear the whispers for something more in our own hearts? Don't we crave some fuller and deeper connections that often seem to elude us? Often because we've come under the sway to a way of life that, although it may serve efficiency, it may serve the economy, does not necessarily serve our well-being in the fullest sense of that word. Religion, in my opinion, should remind us to care for the well-being of our body, the well-being of our minds, and the well-being of all our relations, as some indigenous people say, and tend to our wholeness, what we could even call our holiness. Now, this is the moment in my sermon preparation that I left my desk, got away from my laptop and my position in an office where all the windows were closed on a beautiful day. It felt I could not write another word unless I first went for a walk and enjoyed the splendor that was beckoning me when I truly, truly paid attention to that craving, to that sense of what I really needed. Here's where I reminded myself, and therefore you now, that there are subtle ways that we can shift from the constraints and the lifestyle patterns we may have fallen into. One of my colleagues in an organizational consulting field used to remind us, shifts happen. My notes here say, enunciate clearly. Shifts happen. Yet shifts don't happen unless we participate in making them happen, even in the most subtle of ways. Although the way our lives are often no longer structured to draw upon the healing powers of movement, of art, of music, of nature, belonging and service, we can still prescribe ourselves activities and interactions in any of these areas, even in microdoses, which is what I did on that day when I decided to take a walk before continuing writing my sermon. We become the practices that we do. Therefore, we have available to us the capacity to engage in, to begin, and to support one another to participate in our own well-being and the well-being of our collective community. We've sometimes denied our innate wisdom of what we need to be made whole because of a rigid understanding of what makes us feel healthy. What makes you feel healthy? I'm drilling down on that question again and again this morning because I want it to be something that we return to again and again this week and keep drawing upon that wisdom that's already there, because we do know what makes us feel healthy, even though the patterns or the practices that we've engaged in may have diverted us from our innate wisdom and understanding. We, have often become unquestionably enraptured in a limited understanding of what healing means. Hotz summarized it in this way. We get sick and go to a doctor who gives us a diagnosis. We get treatment, usually a prescription for a pill. We do it again, and the next time we don't feel well, diagnose, treat, repeat. Of course, this works for some sicknesses and conditions. Of course, what we want to do is absolutely utilize these when the conditions require us to do so. Have I made myself clear? Okay. However, as we know more and more, as in the case of John in our reading, the sicknesses may be far more complicated than simple diagnoses can explain and pills can treat. We know that sometimes doctors can't keep up with the cycle of diagnose, treat, and repeat for all that ails us. We know that many people don't feel well most of the time or have adapted to a way of feeling well that doesn't tap the deeper qualities of our being, our well-being. Neither I nor the many physicians and healers that Hotz investigated in the 30 countries that use social prescriptions that she visited suggested that whatever prescriptions or treatments we are already engaging with or considering should be discontinued. The choice, however, before us is to expand our repertoire by having more science, more stories to draw upon, more practical tools to participate in our own health and the well-being of our communities. In social prescribing, there's a shift in the question asked of us. Instead of asking, "What's the matter with you?" let's just try that question out loud for a moment. The question asked is, "What matters to you?" Let's try that one. What do you notice as you ask what's the matter with you? What do you notice in yourself when you ask that question? Judgment. Feels accusatory. It can take you long to get to that. I said, what? What's the matter with me? Yeah, so it's reflecting. Yeah. Nosy. Okay, so it's an okay question to ask. We're not saying dispense of the question. We're saying let's broaden the repertoire a little bit and also ask alongside of that question, what matters to you? And what do you notice when you ask that question? It's an invitation. Doesn't feel like an attack, yeah. It's a depth question. It goes to the heart of the matter. So, already you have some tools in your social prescription toolbox. You can certainly ask, "What's the matter with you?" And you can also ask, "What matters to you?" Or we can turn those questions towards ourselves as well. What matters to me? Once we've asked that question and responded to the question of what matters to us, then social prescribing seeks to find suitable activities that align with the answers that we have to that question. There are lots of examples in Hotz's book on the use of social prescribing in all the categories that she mentioned: movement, nature, service, art, and so forth. But one example I would offer is this one that is related to service. Rachel Zoffness in the Pain Management Workbook, when I wrote that, at first I thought, the Pain Management Workbook. Maybe it is the workbook, but it is a workbook with a particular perspective. She suggests we should visualize pain as a dial. Just as there are things that turn our pain volume up, there are things that also turn our volume down. To help her own patients discover those things, she sometimes asks them, "Will you tell me about a time you were so absorbed in an activity that you briefly forgot all about your pain?" See how the question itself opens up a whole other kind of conversation and self-reflection and investigation around healing. So one example was there was a woman who had back pain, and so the doctor had prescribed that she stay home and rest. Well, she did that for several days, weeks, and then she got very depressed. And so when she returned to the doctor, in addition to the back pain medication, they gave her an antidepressant. She got home, and she just found herself just withdrawing, not feeling much energy in her life, and so forth. So when she was asked, "What really matters to you?" she realized that she really likes helping others. When she was doing something meaningful, she felt more alive. And she didn't feel the pain. She was engaged in something outside of herself. So the social prescription for this person became a volunteer position, helping in an office where parents came with their children, and she would spend time with the parents, just listening to them and their concerns. She had motivation again that was building in her. She had a purpose to be alive again. She had a reason to get up. Her mood and her way of being shifted as well. She felt less confined by her pain, and what I might say, maybe she felt less confined by the treatment that had been applied to her pain, because now she had more motivation to get out there, to be with others, to do meaningful things, to visit her family and her friends. She did other things alongside of that social prescription, so it wasn't as if she abandoned all these other things. She just broadened her repertoire. Am I making sense to you? Okay. So, now why do I even bring this up? Well, Larry, why did you bring this up today? Okay, well, why do I choose to reflect upon this with you this morning? The reason I'm so aware is that we've entered a period of our culture and a time in our political climate when withdrawal and retreat seem like the healthy response. We are in a time when, as you know, there is what the Surgeon General of the United States has called an epidemic of loneliness. We are in a time when we are captured by practices that limit us, limit our deeper connections with one another and our capacities to collaborate together for the common good. We have needs for expanding our capacities and experiences for fuller lives and fuller engagement with life, with nature, with each other, with our creativity, and we can respond more fully to those inclinations, those impulses, those leanings that we have as we begin to create our future. Now, another reason is I started thinking of all the things that we do in this congregation and how many social prescriptions are already available to us. Help me think this out a little bit. So when we think about all the ways that we invite people to utilize their creativity and their creative expression, what are some of those? Choir. Poetry. Ilya, okay. Creativity matters, okay? In what ways do we encourage the engagement in the healing power of nature? Bill? Walking groups. What else? Mondays in the park. Native planting, tending to our grounds. That was a hint. Plant-based eating and training, dinners and support. What ways do we encourage the healing power of service? Ilya. Other volunteer opportunities, what are? campus, right? Manual dining room. Okay. Pastoral care, right. In what ways do we encourage the healing power of belonging? Small groups, potlucks, coffee hour, live streaming our services, meditation group. What ways do we encourage the healing power of movement? Yoga, choir. So the point I'm making is that dance parties, right? I'm all for that. I think there's a movement in that direction. So let me try to conclude quickly. What I'm trying to demonstrate is that as a congregation, there's a way that we can broaden our understanding of what it is that we do. We could look at all of these things as just programs, activities, side things that we do on the side, or we can understand them as central to the kind of healing that we can provide to each other and to our wider community, particularly in a time when we need more healing, we need more opportunities to manage the stress and the anxieties that are so prevalent in the time in which we live. So take a moment during the musical interlude to think about what social prescription might you write for yourself. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Much to think about. So here we are at the stewardship moment in our service. It's a given that we ask First Unitarian members to give 3 T's: time, talent, and treasure to support our church. Here is the moment where we focused on the treasure, the means by which we support our staff, keep the lights on, and the air conditioning, or soon the heat, on. And during the offertory music, there will be a slide showing how to make that gift. From putting your cash or check in the offering plate when it's passed here in the sanctuary, or mailing it or contributing online for those of you at home. Now please join me in dedicating our offering that we'll be making. The act of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love. Action. We dedicate our lives and these our offerings. The ushers now come forward.
Follow the river.
Thank you, choir. That was just beautiful. If you have lit a chalice at home, I invite you to extinguish it now as Reverend Larry extinguishes our sanctuary chalice. His reading is called We Are One by Amy Zucker Morgenstern of our Palo Alto UU Church. Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight, and from each of us, in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparking through space to one another, connecting us invisibly but palpably. We are one, and from every window our light shines.
So let's take a moment once more to imagine those invisible lines that connect us with other people, with nature, with all the healing forces that exist around us and within us. And let's return to that image again and again during this week as a way to sense the connections and honor the connections that are already there. May we be a healing force in this congregation for one another and for the larger community of Wilmington, which we also aim to serve. Our benediction is from E.M. Forrester's book, Howard's End. Only connect. That was the whole of her sermon. Only connect the prose and the passion, and both will be exalted, and human love will be seen at its height. Live in fragments no more. Is this the Sunday where we have the Centering Sunday in room 25? Those of you, it starts at noon, I think, right? Okay. And enjoy a time of fellowship with some delicious snacks brought to you by our board. Have some conversation with others about maybe the social prescription you wrote yourself or the conversation that has been elicited in you as a result of our reflections today. Let's now do our closing hymn. That's right. Please stand as you are willing and able.
It's telling me
Thank